Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Suggested Tutorials. Today in this video session, we are going to discuss about eukaryotes. At first, what is the meaning of the word eukaryotes? The word eukaryotes is divided into two terms, eu and karyon. Eu means true and the word karyon means nucleus. So, the cell which contains a well-defined nucleus and it should also be surrounded by nuclear membrane. Then that particular cell is called as eukaryotic cell. So, well-defined nucleus is present in the eukaryotic cell. The nucleus is surrounded by nuclear membrane. So, nuclear membrane is also present. Along with the well-defined nucleus and nuclear membrane, the eukaryotic cell also contain organelle-like structures. Those organelle-like structures are called as cell organelles. So, cell organelles are also present in the eukaryotic cell. What are those cell organelles? The cell organelles which are present in the eukaryotes are mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum is of two types, smooth endoplasmic reticulum and rough endoplasmic reticulum. Both the type of endoplasmic reticulums are observed in the eukaryotic cell. Smooth as well as rough. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum means the surface of the endoplasmic reticulum does not contain ribosomes, whereas the rough endoplasmic reticulum contains ribosomes on the surface of the endoplasmic reticulum. Vacuoles, ribosomes. The ribosomes are the cell organelles which are present in both prokaryotes as well as eukaryotes. But only difference is the ribosomes which are present in the eukaryotes are ATS type. But the ribosomes which are present in the prokaryotes are 70S type. Ribosomes, peroxisomes, vacuoles, and also plastids. The plastids are also called as chloroplasts. So, these are some of the cell organelles which are present in the eukaryotes, but whereas these are cell organelles are completely absent in the prokaryotes. And coming to the cells which are present in the eukaryotes. What are the cells that are present in the eukaryotes? Protista, fungi, plant and animal cells. So these are some of the examples which comes under the category of the eukaryotes. Does all these cells have similar structure? No. Different cells have different structure. They may be different in their cell wall composition or cell wall may be absent or present. So the cells which are included in the eukaryotes are not identical cells. And coming to the genetic material. Where the genetic material is stored in the eukaryotes. As we have earlier discussed that eukaryotes contains a well-defined nucleus. So let us assume this as a nucleus. The nucleus contains fluid-like structure. What is that fluid-like structure? Nucleoplasm. In the nucleoplasm, thread-like structures are present. Those thread-like structures are called as chromosomes. The chromosomes are the thread-like structures which carries genetic material. So, the genetic material is carried out by the thread-like structures which are called as chromosomes. These genetic materials is transferred from one generation to other generations. So, this is the complete outline of the eukaryotes. And now, let us discuss the structure of the eukaryotic cell. Does all the cells which are included in the eukaryotes have similar or same identical? No. Different cells have different shapes and different structures. So let us discuss the structure of the eukaryotic cell in both plant and animal cells. So these are the structures of the plant and animal cell. Let us discuss one by one. At first, plant cell. The plant cell contains the outer membrane called as cell wall. The cell wall is the outer membrane of the plant cell. And inside the cell wall, another layer is present which is called as plasma membrane. And the outer membrane which gives protection to the plant cell is the cell wall. The cell wall is followed by the layer called as plasma membrane. Inside the plasma membrane, the cytoplasm, fluid-like substance which occupies a complete cell is called as cytoplasm is present. In the cytoplasm, the cell organelles are observed and they are freely floating in the cytoplasm. What are those cell organelles which are observed in the plant cell? Vacuole. The vacuoles are very large in size, whereas in the animal cell, the vacuoles are very small shaped. Whereas in the plant cell, a central large vacuole is present in the plant cell. So, large central vacuole is present. Plastids are present. Plastids are nothing but chloroplasts. These are the structures which are only present in the plant cell, but the plastids are absent in the animal cell. Mitochondria, ribosomes, Golgi complex, endoplasmic reticulum, nucleus. So, these are the cell organelles which are present in the plant cell. This is the complete structure of the plant cell. The only differences in the animal and the plant cell are the plant cell contains the cell wall, but the animal cell does not contain cell wall. The large central vacuole is present in the plant cell, but whereas these large central vacuole is absent, only small vacuoles are present in the animal cell. And also the structure plastid is present in the plant cell. Those plastids are also called as chloroplasts. These chloroplasts contributes to the color to the plants. These plastids are absent in the animal cell. Now coming to the animal cell. The animal cell contains only one layer, means cell wall is completely absent in the animal cell. The outer membrane is the plasma membrane is present and it is not surrounded by cell wall. Cell wall is completely absent in the animal cell. And also the vacuoles are very small when compared to that of the plant cell. Whereas in the plant cell, large central vacuole is present, but in the animal cell, small vacuoles are present. And also ribosomes are present. Golgi complex is present. Mitochondria is present. Endoplasmic reticulum is present. The endoplasmic reticulum may be smooth or rough endoplasmic reticulum. And also additional structure which is present in the animal cell is centrioles. The centrioles are the structures which are present exclusively only in the animal cells. These centrioles are completely absent in the plant cell. So, the difference is the animal cell does not contain cell wall, and also large central vacuole is absent in the animal cell. The additional structure centrioles is present in the animal cell. This is the major difference between the animal cell and as well as plant cell. And now let us discuss about the complete structure of the eukaryotic cell, and also we shall discuss about the cell organelles present in the eukaryotic cell. And we have already discussed it earlier that the outermost protective layer which gives protection to the cell is the cell wall, and the cell wall was followed by the another layer called as cell membrane. Inside the cell membrane, the fluid like substance is present which is called as cytoplasm. In the cytoplasm, cell organelles freely floats. So let us first discuss about the structure of the cell membrane. The structure of the cell membrane was a mostly accepted theory was given by Singer and Nicholson. Singer and Nicholson proposed a theory which helps us to understand the complete structure of the cell membrane. What was that model called as? That model was called as fluid mosaic model. According to this fluid mosaic model, the cell membrane is prepared with the composite. The total structure of the cell membrane is composed of both proteins as well as lipids. So, the cell membrane is prepared both with proteins and lipids. And the lipids which are involved in the cell membrane formation are of phospholipids type. Phospholipids, which means the lipids gets combined with the phosphate groups, and this phospholipids helps in the formation of the cell membrane. And coming to the proteins, the proteins are of two types: integral proteins and peripheral proteins. What is meant by integral and peripheral proteins? The proteins which are present inside the structure of the cell membrane, those proteins are called as integral. Whereas the proteins which are present on the surface of the cell membrane, those proteins are called as peripheral proteins. So, if the proteins are present inside the structure of the cell membrane, then those proteins are called as integral proteins. And those proteins which are present on the surface of the cell membrane are called as peripheral proteins. And now, let us discuss about the structure of the fluid mosaic model in detail. So, let us draw the structure of the fluid mosaic model. And here, the main point is that the lipids which are involved in the cell membrane was two-layered, bilayered structure. The phospholipids forms into two layers. So, bilayer structure of phospholipids are observed in the cell membrane model. Bilayer of proteins. The lipids, the phospholipids are arranged into two layers, and in the middle of these lipids, the proteins are arranged. And the lipid layer contains two portions, that is called as head region and tail region. Again I am repeating, and the fluid mosaic model was proposed by Singer and Nicholson. According to this model, the cell membrane structure is prepared with both proteins and lipids, and the lipids which are involved in the cell membrane formation are phospholipids type. And these phospholipids are arranged in bilayer structures. Bilayer means in two layers. The lipids are arranged in two layers. In between these two layers, the proteins are arranged. Okay. And again the lipids contains two portions. Head portion and inner tail portion. The head portion gets freely floats in the cytoplasm. So they are called as hydrophilic. The head portion of the lipids are hydrophilic. Means they get freely floats in the cytoplasm. But whereas the tail portion of the lipids are hydrophobic. They does not get freely floats in the cytoplasm. So the lipids contains two portion, head portion and tail portion. These are called as head portions, and the tail-like structures which are attached to the head portions are called as tail portion. These tail portions are hydrophobic in nature, which gets freely floats in the does not freely floats in the cytoplasm. This is the structure of the cell membrane according to the fluid mosaic model. And coming to the proteins, and in between these bilayer structures of the phospholipids, the proteins are arranged. The proteins which are inside the cell membrane are called as integral proteins. As we have earlier discussed that the proteins which are present in the cell membrane, within the cell membrane, are called as integral proteins. And some of the proteins are present on the surface of the cell membrane. On the surface of the cell membrane. These type of proteins which are observed on the surface of the cell membrane are called as peripheral proteins. So the proteins which are observed within the cell membrane are called as integral proteins, and the proteins which are observed on the surface of the cell membrane are called as peripheral proteins. So two types of proteins are present. And also in between these phospholipids, other structures are also present. Other fat molecular structures are present. What are these fat molecule structures are called? Cholesterol. So, in between the phospholipids, tightly packed phospholipid structures, there are also small molecules called as cholesterol. Cholesterol also constitutes in the formation of the cell membrane. So this is about the total structure of the cell membrane according to the fluid mosaic model, which was proposed by Singer and Nicholson. And what is the purpose of this fluid mosaic model? How it is functions? And coming to the function of the fluid mosaic model of the cell membrane, the structure helps for the purpose of movement of ions across the membrane. So, what is the function? The cell membrane helps to move the ions across the membrane. Move the ions across the membrane. If any ions wants to move out of the membrane or in and outside of the membrane, then the cell membrane helps. How? And coming to the movement of the ions, two types of movements takes place. Active and passive. So, let us discuss the active and passive movement of ions across the cell membrane in detail. And now, let us discuss about the function of the cell membrane. At first, what is the function of the cell membrane? The main function of the cell membrane is to move the ions across the membrane. And in this process, two types of transport takes place. What are those two types of transports? Active transport and passive transport. What is the difference between the active and the passive transport? In the active transport, for the movement of the ions, there is no requirement of energy. No energy is needed. But whereas in the passive transport, if the ions want to move, they need energy. Energy is needed and they utilize the ATP. So, in the active process, no energy is required, whereas in the passive process, the energy is required. Let us discuss about the active transport in detail. In the active transport, the molecules moves along the concentration gradient. Along the concentration gradient. That is, for example, what is the solute that takes place in the active transport? Water. And also neutral solutes. Neutral solute means they does not have either positive charge or either negative charge. They are neutral. So, the water and the neutral solutes exist in the active transport process. The water molecules, if the water molecules wants to move across the membrane, they move along the concentration gradient, that is from higher concentration to lower concentration. To lower concentration. If any solutes moves along the higher concentration to lower concentration, that is called as along the concentration gradient, and for this purpose there is no requirement of energy. Okay, and let us discuss about the passive transport. We have already know that in the passive transport what takes place? Energy requirement takes place in the form of ATP. So here, what are the molecules that comes under the category of passive transport? Na plus and K plus pump. So sodium and the potassium molecules, if they want to move across the membrane, they consume energy in the form of ATP. And they does not move along the concentration gradient. They move against the concentration gradient. Against the concentration gradient. Which means opposite of passive transport, opposite of active transport. What happens exactly in the passive transport means, if the sodium molecules want to transport across the membrane, they get moved from lower concentration to higher concentration. Lower concentration to higher concentration. So, this was completely opposite to that of the active transport. Whereas in the active transport, no energy is needed, but in the passive transport, energy is needed in the form of ATP. And in the active transport, the molecules, if the molecules want to move, they move along the concentration gradient, that is higher concentration to lower concentration. For example, water molecule wants to move across the membrane, they travels in the region of higher concentration to lower concentration through the process of osmosis. And in this process, there is no requirement of energy. But whereas in the passive, they does not move along the concentration gradient. They move against the concentration gradient, that is from lower concentration to higher concentration. And in this process, energy consumption takes place in the form of ATP. So this is about the complete process of function of the cell membrane, which takes place in the cell membrane fluid mosaic model. And now let us discuss about the structure and function of cell wall. Cell wall. Does all the cells which are included in the eukaryotes have the same cell wall composition and cell wall? No. Animal cell does not contain cell wall, and only the cells which contain cell wall are algae, fungi and plants. These are only the cells which contains the cell wall, and the animal cell does not contain cell wall at all. And let us discuss about the composition of the cell wall. Does all the cells which are included in the eukaryotes contains the same composition? No. Different cells contains different composition of the cell wall. Let us discuss the composition. Algae. The cell wall which is present in the algae are prepared with cellulose, mannose, galactans, and also some of the algae cell wall is prepared with calcium carbonate. And coming to the fungi, the cell wall in the fungi is prepared with polysaccharides. Polysaccharides. And in the plants, the cell wall is prepared with the different composition. Cellulose, hemicellulose, pectins, and also some of the plant cells are prepared with proteins. So these are different compositions of the cell wall which is observed in the algae, fungi and plants, and the animal cell does not contain cell wall. Coming to the function of the cell wall. What is the main function of the cell wall? The firstmost function of the cell wall is the shape. The cell wall gives shape to the cell. If the shape is in irregular shape of the cell is in irregular shape, then the cell wall promotes shape to the particular cell. And it promotes the rigidity to the cell. It gives rigidity to the cell and gives particular shape to the cell. Just now we have discussed about the structural and functional aspects of cell membrane as well as cell wall. And now we are going to deal with the endomembrane system. What is endomembrane system? We have already discussed it that eukaryotic cell contains different cell organelles like Golgi apparatus, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, chloroplast, vacuole, etc. So, if these cell organelles gets coordinated to perform any function, then they are considered under the endomembrane system. So, what are the cell organelles that are getting coordinated to perform the function means Golgi complex, endoplasmic reticulum, vacuoles, and also lysosomes. These are the cell organelles which are included under the endomembrane system. These four cell organelles gets coordinated and performs a function which is required for the cell. And other than these, what are the cell organelles are present? Mitochondria, plastids are present, and also peroxisomes. These three cells does not comes under the category of endomembrane system. Why? Because they are not coordinated with the other cell organelles. Only these four cells are coordinated and performs the function which is required for the cell development or any other process. So this was about the complete endomembrane system in the eukaryotic cell. So today in this video we have discussed about the outline of the eukaryotic cell and difference between the plant and the animal cell and the structural and functional aspects of the complete eukaryotic cell. And in the upcoming video we are going to discuss about the each and every cell organelle which is present in the eukaryotic cell. If you like this video, hit a like button, share to your friends and subscribe to Satyasri Tutorials. Thank you.